Okay, let's get into this. That really magnetic pull, you know? The one we sometimes feel towards something we perhaps shouldn't want.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize that feeling, don't you? That little tug that seems to get stronger when something feels just out of reach, maybe even?
Yeah, forbidden.
It's a it's a surprisingly powerful force, and what's fascinating, I think, is how early this pattern seems to start.
Early? Like how early?
Well, think about a toddler, reaching for something they've just been told, no, don't touch that.
Ah, right.
That intense focus they suddenly have.
Yeah,
It's not really just about the object itself, is it? It's more complex than that.
exactly. I always picture like a little kid at a playground fence. Small hands gripping the metal.
Okay.
And on the other side, there's just some ordinary toy, maybe a bright red ball, nothing special. Suddenly, it's the most fascinating thing imaginable.
Yes, because of the fence.
Yeah, it's not just a ball. It's that boundary, isn't it?
Ah.
No somehow just creates this whole new level of wanting it. That initial no, often coming from a parent or caregiver, it seems to plant a seed. It really does.
A seed for what, though?
It's the start of understanding limits, external ones first. And crucially, how those limits can actually shape what we focus on, what becomes intensely interesting to us.
And that simple image, the kid at the fence, gosh, it just echoes in so many adult situations, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
All the time. Like, chasing after someone who's just not available, Suddenly they seem incredibly attractive.
Or fixating on a challenge that seems almost impossible.
Right, that obsessive drive. Or even, on a smaller scale, just craving that specific food you've sworn off.
Exactly. The diet example's perfect.
It's like the restriction itself. Doesn't kill the desire at all. It just amplifies it somehow.
It's almost like the scarcity principle from economics, but with a psychological twist. The no creates a kind of psychological scarcity.
Scarcity. Yeah.
And our reaction, maybe a very human one, is to want what feels less accessible even more intensely.
So this barrier, this feeling of you can't have that,
Yeah.
it actually becomes the fuel. Is that what you're saying?
In many ways, yes. It's like we pour more energy, well, you could call it psychic energy or longing, into something precisely because it is partially inaccessible.
Huh. So it's not just about wanting the thing itself.
No, it's often about wanting the thing despite the obstacle, or maybe even because of it.
Wow. Okay. Psychic energy.
Yes, and this investment of energy, let's call it libido in the psychoanalytic sense, not just sexual, but life energy, drive.
Right.
It can intensify quite dramatically when an object or a goal or an experience is blocked. Think of it like a spring coiling tighter and tighter.
Right. Compressed.
The more it's compressed by that prohibition, by that no, the more potential energy it stores up. And that energy often seeks release, sometimes in quite unexpected ways.
Which maybe explains why, when we really look at our motivations, we often find ourselves pulled hardest towards the very things that have the biggest restrictions around them.
Precisely. That connection is key.
So, back to the fence. That ordinary toy isn't ordinary anymore, is it? The act of it being forbidden somehow gives it this special quality, almost sacred in a weird way.
It elevates it. What was just another thing becomes precious, valuable, simply because it's on the other side of that line.
And this reveals something about how we value things then.
I think so. It suggests we value things not always for their inherent worth, but sometimes for the challenge they represent. A challenge to our sense, perhaps, of autonomy. What we believe we should be able to have or do.
It's almost, and this sounds weird, like there can be a strange satisfaction in the frustration itself.
That sounds counterintuitive, I know.
Yeah, but that feeling of longing, of being denied, it can become a familiar state, can it? Like, maybe we learn that the wanting itself, that intense focus, can be consuming, even if we don't get the thing.
That touches on something really crucial about desire.
Yeah.
Sometimes the pull isn't just about getting the object despite the prohibition. Sometimes it's about the prohibition allowing us to re-experience a familiar dynamic.
A familiar dynamic of,
Longing, maybe of struggle, maybe even the unconscious hope of eventually overcoming that obstacle, even if sometimes the obstacle is one we've partly set up ourselves internally.
okay, wow, but that kid at the fence, they're not just feeling desire, are they? There's usually that little knot of anxiety too.
Absolutely.
What if I reach too far? What if I get caught trying to climb over? That fear of breaking the rule.
That anxiety, it often serves two roles, doesn't it? On one hand, it's protective, it warns us, danger, consequences.
Right. Keeps us in line.
But paradoxically, it can also heighten the excitement. It raises the perceived stakes involved in actually going for the forbidden thing, makes it feel more thrilling, perhaps.
And the fence, it's more than just wood or metal, isn't it? Metaphorically speaking.
Oh, definitely. It represents that line, the line between allowed and not allowed, between maybe our conscious plans and, well, deeper, perhaps unconscious urges or wishes.
So the fence, the barrier, it actually creates the conditions for the desire to get so intense.
Exactly. Without the boundary, the object often loses that special charge, that magnetism. The limitation is weirdly integral to the intensity of the craving.
Okay, so what happens then? The child eventually turns away from the fence, right? They usually do. Does the desire just vanish?
Not usually, no. It's more like it sinks down, goes underground, you might say, into what we think of as the unconscious mind.
But it's still there, still active.
Still active, yes.
Yeah.
Still holding that energy. And it might pop up later, perhaps in unexpected places or disguised forms.
Like how?
Well, these unacknowledged or repressed desires, they can continue to influence us. That inexplicable pull you might feel towards certain people or jobs or even limitations, or maybe a compulsion to seek out specific kinds of challenges. These could be echoes.
Echoes of those first experiences with no, with the fence.
It's quite possible, yes. Echoes of prohibition.
And it's rarely a simple, pure feeling, is it? That tension at the fence. It shows how we can want something desperately, but also maybe fear getting it.
Yes. That ambivalence is key. Wanting it, maybe dreading the consequences, maybe feeling guilty for wanting it, that simultaneous push and pull creates a really powerful psychological charge.
A charge that can last.
Oh, it can
Hear about it.
persist throughout life,
Yeah.
playing out in all sorts of ways, our choices and partners, how we approach ambition, our relationship with authority.
Which leads to this idea that that early moment, that scene at the fence, it creates a kind of template, a pattern we might unconsciously replay.
That tendency to unconsciously recreate early patterns, especially relational ones, is a core idea in psychoanalytic thought. We might not consciously want the frustration, obviously,
Who wants that?
but the familiar structure, the desire, the barrier, the intensity, it can feel strangely compelling on an unconscious level. It's a known script.
So that parent or whoever saying no at the fence, their voice doesn't just stay out there, it gets internalized, right?
Exactly. It becomes part of our own internal landscape, part of our inner critic, you could say, or what Freud called the superego.
Our own sense of what's right and wrong, what's allowed.
Yes. And here's the really fascinating part. That internalized authority, it doesn't just have the power to forbid. Paradoxically, it also has the power to define what becomes intensely desirable.
How so?
The stronger the initial no, the more powerfully that internalized voice forbids something, the more allured, the more charged the forbidden thing can gain for our unconscious desires.
Wow. Okay. And think about the child's gaze, too. How they look at that toy. They focus all their attention, all that longing onto it. It's like the toy starts to glow, almost, to become hyper-significant. It's not just seen. It's intensely looked at, studied.
That intense focus of attention where we direct our psychic energy is absolutely crucial in fueling desire.
Yeah.
By dwelling mentally on what feels unattainable, we create this vivid mental picture, this representation.
Which makes the wanting even stronger.
Precisely. It feeds the loop.
Even time seems to play a part, doesn't it? The longer that child stands there, just looking, wanting, the more charged the whole situation gets.
Yes, the waiting, the anticipation, the delay.
Yeah.
It definitely builds the tension. That initial moment of prohibition can gain even more weight over time.
Especially if later experiences kind of echo it.
Exactly. Each new restriction, each new fence we encounter can almost layer onto and reinforce that original feeling, that original pattern of longing.
Which might help explain why some desires, some longings can stick with us for years, decades even. That frustrated reach for a toy could maybe resurface as a particular kind of ambition later in life, or a pattern in romantic relationships.
The specific objects change, of course. We're not still literally wanting that ball behind the fence.
Hopefully not.
But the underlying structure of the desire, the prohibition, the longing, the intensification that can remain remarkably consistent, it really highlights how powerful those early formative experiences are.
And it's not just wanting, is it? There's a whole cocktail of emotions swirling around there. Maybe a bit of shame for wanting it, a flicker of hope you might get it, perhaps defiance, then maybe resignation.
Yes, desire is rarely clean or singular. It's usually tangled up with all sorts of other feelings: guilt, anxiety, excitement, frustration, hope, despair, all part of the experience of forbidden desire.
It almost feels like some people maybe unconsciously, develop a taste for that specific intensity, that feeling of being denied, the sheer force of the longing, like a weird satisfaction in the frustration.
That tendency,
Yeah.
finding a kind of unconscious satisfaction or familiarity in the state of longing itself. It shows just how complex our inner emotional world is. Sometimes the unconscious goal isn't solely getting the thing.
What is it then?
It might also be about the familiar feeling state, the internal drama, the intensity that the yearning itself creates. It's a known, albeit sometimes painful, place to be.
So as we kind of wrap up this part of our dive, that image, the child at the fence, it really holds so much, doesn't it?
It's incredibly resonant.
The desire, the barrier, the way the restriction fuels the longing, and that whole mess of emotions that comes with wanting something you maybe can't or shouldn't have. It feels like that one simple scene unlocks a surprising amount about what drives us even now as adults.
Precisely. That glimpse into the psychology of forbidden desires, rooted in those very early encounters with limits, it really sets the stage. It helps us understand the complex, often hidden ways these dynamics keep shaping our inner lives, our choices, our relationships.
Yeah.
And what's striking is how such a seemingly simple childhood moment lays the groundwork for so much adult motivation, so much internal conflict. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the fences, both the real ones and the metaphorical ones, that still shape your desires today.
That's a powerful thought to leave with.
Are those fences always external, put there by circumstance or other people? Or have you perhaps built some of them inside yourself? And what might you discover if you dare to look a bit closer at what those inner boundaries are really protecting you from, or perhaps preventing you from reaching?